Okay, so here is a question that fits in very well with what I was just talking about. The person is asking about forgiveness. Yeah, forgiveness is another thing that's very important to do before we die. Because who wants to die hating somebody? Yeah. But the question here is, what happens if you want to reconcile with the other person, but they don't want to talk to you? Then what? Okay? This happens a lot, doesn't it? Sometimes somebody hurts us, we don't want to talk to them. Sometimes we hurt somebody else, they don't want to talk to us. But the person who did the hurting really feels bad about it. They want to apologize. They want to, reconcile. And the other person doesn't want to talk to them. Or sometimes it's the person who was on the receiving end who, wants to reconcile, and the other person doesn't want to talk to them. So here, when we're talking about the purification practice, restoring the relationship is primarily done in our own mind. Yeah, if we can go to the other person and apologize and reconcile, that's very, very good, because that eases our mind, eases the other person's mind, restores the relationship while we're still alive. But if it's a situation where the other person doesn't want to talk to you, the most important thing is that in your mind, you have changed your attitude towards that person. That in your mind, you don't hold a grudge wanting them to suffer, that you don't want revenge. Yeah. That you have a different attitude towards them than when you had the conflict or when you said something hurtful. Okay, so the first thing always is to work with ourselves and our own motivation and clear our own mind of any bad feeling towards the other person. Okay, then we may also want to see if we can talk to them. Yeah. And so you might call them or text them. If you feel that they're not going to respond positively to that, then maybe write them a letter. In your letter, it's best to keep the letter brief or the text brief, and to just say, I have regret about what happened, and I would really like if we could have a normal relationship, or be in communication, or share holidays together, or whatever it is that you see, as a way that reconciling would look like. And just keep the message brief and say, I would like to have, a relationship with you again. Would you be willing to meet with me? Yeah? And, when you meet with somebody else, I think the important thing is, if you want to apologize, you apologize. Don't expect anything from the other person. Yeah? They may apologize back to you. They may not. That's not what's important. The important thing is, in your heart, you're expressing your regret, and in that way you're clearing your conscience and you're taking responsibility for your part of it. Yeah. You can't ensure somebody else's attitude or response. So you just have to leave it completely open. Yeah. If you think the person is going to respond negatively, you might even write your apology rather than to say it to them directly. Yeah? So you have to get a sense for this. If it's a situation where you apologize and you want to reconcile with the person, it's not always necessary to go back in the past and talk about the past. And you did this, and this is how I felt, and then you did this, and then I felt bad because of that. And then the other person said, well, you did this, and that made me feel bad, and you did that, and I didn't like it. So if you try and go back in the past and rehash everything, who did what, you're not always going to be able to work it out because you have different memories of what actually happened. Because we all pull out, we're very selective in what we remember in a situation. And we may remember, oh, this person said this and this and this to me. And if we say that to them, they don't even remember it. It's not even on the radar for them. Whereas they'll say to us, you did this and this and this, and we're going, I did? I don't even remember. Or I did something like that, but it wasn't at all like you described. And my intention was really something else. So if you try and go back in the past, sometimes it can just be a mess because you have different memories. Yeah? So you have to see. Sometimes you have to do that with a person, sometimes you don't. Yeah? Sometimes the best way is to just say, let's let the past be. I have regret for whatever I said that was hurtful towards you. You don't need to spell out every single thing. You can say, whatever I said or did that was hurtful towards you, please forgive me. I have regret for that. And now I would really like, on Chinese New Year's, if our families can get together. Yeah? Or I would really like if once in a while, we could meet and talk. Or I would really like, kind of whatever it is. So talk about the future. Some things you would like to do in the future with these people, instead of just going in the past again and again and again, ad nauseum. Okay? That makes some sense to you? Okay? But then sometimes you really have to give the other person some space. Yeah, sometimes they're just not ready yet, so just give them space. Keep your good intention, your good attitude. Try later. Give them some time. Okay? Yeah, now a Bahasa question.
Thank you, Venerable. This is still related to death.
This is what?
Still related to death.
Okay, death. Good.
Kalau ditanya setelah mati mau kemana? The question is, literally is like this. If someone asks, where do we go after death? Probably the question is, where do we go after death? Probably the meaning of the questions. The second is, apakah benar waktu kita sakit keras, lalu meninggal, apa yang teringat? Kita akan menjadi seperti yang kita ingat. Misalnya saya paling takut kecoa, saya akan menjadi kecoa. Sorry. Is it true that the moment when we are having severe illness, and then or dying, and after that we die because of the illness, and the last moment of thought, the last moment of our thought, that is our next rebirth is. For example, if I'm afraid of cockroach, and I will be
afraid of what?
Cockroach.
Cockroach. Okay.
Cockroach. Sorry. Yeah. If I remember
cockroaches.
Cockroach, and I would be the next life. I will be born as
cockroach. Okay.
I hope you get it.
Okay. Cockroach. Okay. So, where do we go after death? This is kind of a mystery, isn't it? From a Buddha's perspective, we are reborn, as long as there is ignorance in our mind and we don't understand the nature of reality, then our mind stream is attracted to take another body, this kind of body. And, what makes a certain kind of body attractive to us, is our past karma. So according to our previous actions, we get attracted towards different kind of bodies to take rebirth in. You know? So if some virtuous karma is ripening, then we may have a karmic appearance of a human body, and we're attracted towards taking rebirth in it. If we have non-virtue, we've done that in a past life, then at the time of death we may be attracted to a body where there's, in an unfortunate realm. So there's many, many things that, and many, many factors that influence what rebirth we're going to take. The primary thing is the karma we create. But the karma, in any of our mind streams, we have a whole variety of karma, because we've all created some virtue and some non-virtue, haven't we? Yeah? And so different karmic seeds are going to ripen at different times. If a certain action was very heavy, either virtuous or non-virtuous, then that karma probably will ripen first. Okay? If we did an action repeatedly, even if it wasn't so heavy, but we did it repeatedly, that karma could ripen fairly soon. Okay? Whereas a karma where the motivation was very weak, that maybe we did only once, that's not, on the top 10 of karma that's going to ripen. Okay? But what also influences what karma ripens is the thought we have at the time of death, which is why it is very important to create a very peaceful environment for somebody to die in. Yeah? If you turn off the television, for goodness sakes, don't let somebody die with movies with sex and violence going on. Yeah? Because that kind of influence is going to make a negative karma ripen. Yeah? Instead, make the room very quiet. Excuse me, that's kind of disturbing for me. Thank you. Back here. You want to have the room kind of quiet and peaceful, and to say things related to Dharma to the person so that they can think of the Dharma. Yeah? If your loved one is dying and you're in the room sobbing because you're so miserable, how are you going to benefit that person? Yeah? It's going to make the other person dying much harder, because they're going to say, I love you and you're so miserable, and I don't want you to suffer, but I can't stop myself from dying. And it creates a lot of attachment for them to this life. Yeah? So I know many people think it's good to be surrounded by their family when they die. Personally, I'm not so sure. Because if your family is crying, holding your hand, I love you, don't leave. What am I going to do without you? I love you. Oh my goodness, how are you going to have a peaceful mind when you die with that kind of stuff going on? Okay? So if you're upset because somebody is dying, either be quiet and be in the back of the room, or leave the room so that you don't upset the person who's dying. Yeah? The person who's dying is the one who needs help. It's not about me and my grief at that time. Okay? I was, in August, a very dear friend of mine was dying, and I went down to be with him when he was dying. And I was also friends with the family. So his wife was there, his 2 grown kids were there, and a mutual friend of ours was there. And it was so clear to me at that time that when you have a lot of attachment for the person who's dying, it's very difficult for you to benefit them, okay? Because I was there with him, and I said mantra, I gave him instructions, you know, relax, you're dying, don't cling to anything from this life. There's nothing here worth clinging to. Your family, everybody's going to be okay, don't worry about anything. You know, kind of come back to your love and compassion and go forward in your next life having a mind of love and compassion. Generate bodhicitta, yeah. Really aspire to have a precious human life where you can meet the Dharma, meet a fully qualified teacher, practice the Dharma well in your next life and generate realizations. You know, go forward with that kind of intention, or go forward with the aspiration to be reborn in the Pure Land, where again you can practice. Yeah. But don't worry about anything in this life. Don't be attached to anything here. And so I said mantra and so on, you know, for hours when I was with him as he was dying. The family, meanwhile, I mean, they were crying, and his friend was crying. They were very good, though, because they knew from before. I had told them from before. Actually, the wife's a Buddhist, so she told the kids who weren't Buddhist, you know. But they all knew, don't cry loud and stay in the back. And, you know, don't create a real tumultuous environment for him while he's dying. So, you know, but I could see they were in no shape to help him because their own attachment was making their grief too strong, yeah, to really see what he needed. But then after he died, after the breath stopped, and you know, from a Buddhist viewpoint, again, they aren't dead just when the breath stops. You know, the consciousness can still be in the body for some time. If the body starts to smell, then for sure the consciousness is left. But if it hasn't started to smell yet, the consciousness could still be in the body in a very subtle form, in which case you don't want to touch the body and you don't want all havoc going on in the room. You know, we were very fortunate there. The wife had made arrangements with the hospital, so he was in a private room. They didn't need the room. The nurses would let him stay there for a long time after the breath stopped. You know, they wanted to take the tubes out. I said no, you know, because that would disturb the body. The nurses were very respectful. And so then, after he died, we stayed there. And we said a lot of prayers. So we recited the 8 verses of thought transformation, this one. We recited the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, the Heart Sutra, many different kinds of prayers out loud, with the idea that, you know, that kind of ambience can help him be peaceful and can remind him of the Dharma. Yeah, so that's the kind of way you want to help people dying, okay? And then finally, if you know, the body starts to smell, or actually, you know, as they're dying and just after the breath stops, it's quite good if you have a blessed pill to put it on the crown of the head and then keep touching the person's crown and saying, you know, go to the Pure Land, take a precious human life. Because I say if the mind stream leaves the body through the crown, it's much more indicative of a good future life. But then when it's time to move the body, then you know, again at the crown you touch it, you pull the hair, you again tell the person, be reborn in the Pure Land or take a precious human life. Okay? So that's a way to really help somebody. Whereas, you know, if you're upset and the environment is very upset around the person, or there's people are quarreling, maybe the kids are quarreling about something in the room, then that can engender some disturbing attitude or disturbing emotion in the dying person's mind. And if, for example, anger arises in somebody's mind as they're dying, then that can make a non-virtuous karma ripen, which would send them to a lower realm. Whereas if you remind them of the Dharma, then that can make a virtuous karma ripen, which will help them to have a good rebirth. Okay? If a person's not a Buddhist, you can still say, rejoice at all the good you did in the world. Rejoice at the love that you shared with other people. Rejoice at your generosity. Yeah? Go forward with a mind that wants to live an ethical life and be generous and be kind to others. So you speak in just regular language or in whatever words and vocabulary the dying person is going to understand. And this can be very, very beneficial for them. Okay. Next. So somebody is asking me, what made me decide to become a monastic? Well, I never thought I would be a monastic. That's not what I grew up thinking I was going to be. I didn't grow up even as a Buddhist. Yeah, so that notion was not even in my mind at all. But your life often turns out very different than you think it is going to. I met the Dharma when I was 24 years old, and somehow, the teachings, because our teachers said you don't have to believe anything we say, you think about it and decide if it makes sense. And so I did that, and Buddhism really made a lot of sense to me, because I had a lot of questions about why am I alive, and what's the purpose of my life, and how do I live a meaningful life? Yeah, because I always wanted to live a meaningful life, but I didn't know exactly what that would look like. When I met the Dharma, then that really clarified so much, because it became very, evident that creating virtue, generating positive attitudes, gaining the Dharma realizations, aspiring for full awakening for the benefit of beings, cultivating genuine love and compassion rather than a clinging attachment for others, developing equanimity and impartiality so that I can benefit all beings. These became obvious that this is kind of what a meaningful life would look like. And I looked at my life at that time. I was a teacher in elementary school. I had quite a good life. Yeah, I was married, no children, to a very nice man. I had everything that you were supposed to have, but I still wasn't happy, and I still didn't feel like my life was meaningful. So, when I met the Dharma and began to understand what a meaningful life was, and I thought, this is how I want to live. And I knew that my attachment was very strong, and my anger was very strong, and that if I stayed in my regular lay life, going to work, having a family and everything, I knew I wouldn't be able to practice very well, because the power of my mental afflictions was so strong. And so I thought, if I ordain, this will give me the time and space to really focus on practicing the Dharma, on learning it, practicing it. And I knew also that I needed to really live an ethical life much better, I wasn't living so ethically before. And I thought, if I take the precepts, this will really help me to get my own ethical life going in the direction I wanted it to go in, and help me not waste my energy, not harm others, and live a life where maybe I could be of benefit to others. Because I saw that if, my afflictions are so strong that if I just live a regular lay life, at the end of my life I'll have a ton of negative karma. I'll be reborn in an unhappy realm, and let alone being unable to help anybody else, I won't even be able to help myself. Yeah? So even though my family was not happy about it, I knew what I was doing was the right thing in the long term, and that it would benefit my family in their future lives, even though in this life they didn't understand what in the world I was doing. Okay? So I went ahead and did it, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life, because I think anything good that I've been able to do in my life has been done on the basis of being a monastic and holding the precepts. Yeah. So if any of you have that thought in the back of your mind, I really encourage you, sometimes people say, oh, you're a monastic, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. It's not a thing of like, oh, I'm so deprived, I can't do these things. It's like you've thought about it and you realize, okay, I could do those things, but at the end of my life, what meaning and value will they have? Whereas if I did other things at the end of my life, what meaning and value will those activities have? And then you come to realign what you think is important. Yeah, and like, having a husband and kids is really not so important. Having career success is not so important. Creating virtue, benefiting sentient beings, that's much more important to me. So, in my case, my husband and I split up because I wanted to ordain. Yeah. It's an interesting story. My mother introduced him to somebody else, and they're married. Yeah. They have 3 children, and we get along very well. Yeah. So, in my situation, it ended quite nicely, actually. There was a time period where we didn't talk or whatever. He needed time to kind of heal from the split up. But eventually, we're good friends now. So, okay, so that's why I decided to become a monastic.
Probably this one also relates to becoming a nun. Just make it related, actually. In Karanya Metta Sutta, there is a line. It says, "Don't be with the fools." Don't be friend with the fool.
Yeah.
So, what is the relationship? What is the relationship between this line and the training of mind transformation? The 8 verses of.
Oh, this is a very interesting question.
The relationship between friendship.
Yeah, so the relationship between not associating with fools and practicing the mind training. Yeah. I think the relationship is when we don't practice the mind training, then we become the fool that other people should not associate with. Yeah. Because when we don't practice mind training, we're quarrelsome, we're demanding, we have lots of expectations for other people, we push them on people without giving them any choice. We're very attached. We want what we want when we want it. Yeah. So we become a fool. The definition of a fool is somebody who can't discriminate virtue from non-virtue. Or even if they can discriminate virtue from non-virtue, ignores it and does not try and create virtue and abandon non-virtue. That's the definition of a fool. Somebody might have a PhD and be a CEO of a very important company, but in terms of the Dharma, they are a fool. Okay? Somebody might be illiterate and poor, but in terms of the Dharma, they are a sage. Okay? So we don't want to be a fool. We want to be somebody who can be a good friend, who can, have a spiritual friendship with others. How do we do that? Again, first thing is keeping good ethical conduct. Because if we don't keep good ethical conduct, other people aren't going to trust us. Okay, so to abandon the 3 physical non-virtues, killing or harming others physically, taking their stuff, and then unwise or unkind sexual behavior. Abandoning the 4 speech negativities, lying, creating disharmony, harsh speech, and idle talk. Abandoning the 3 mental non-virtues, coveting others' possessions, having ill will and malice towards them, wishing them bad, and wrong views. Okay? So when we practice these 8 verses of thought training, we're going to keep much better ethical conduct. We're going to have much more fortitude. And that will enable us to have genuine love and compassion that we can spread impartially towards all living beings. Okay? That's an interesting question, So if we practice this, we can learn to become a person who can be a good friend to others. So having good friends doesn't just mean that the other person is a good friend. It means that we know how to be a good friend to them. Okay, so somebody's asking about the seed syllable Hri, that stands in the center of the lotus and moon seed at Chenrezig's heart. So when you visualize that, you can visualize it in Sanskrit. You can visualize, how do you spell it, H-R-I in Bahasa? Okay, then you visualize that. Yeah? Yeah? So you can visualize it in the alphabet that you know. Okay? And then you think, because that is at the center of Chenrezig's heart. Our heart is where we feel things that are important. Our heart is kind of our center. And so that seed syllable represents Chenrezig's blissful, omniscient mind, that's filled with love and compassion equally, that knows the nature of reality and can teach it to others. And because it's a very small letter at the heart of Chenrezig, it gives us a different feeling than when we visualize, something else.